Welcome in. I am Clay Travis. I sometimes do television. You will see me later tonight on Fox News, virtue of the text messages that I am sending right as this show starts. Saturday, college football is back. I've got some PrizePicks picks for you, and that's great because PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Thanks to PrizePicks, it's just you against the number. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. And right now, one Caleb Williams passing yard every week in September gives you an automatic win. They're giving you a free win throughout September as long as Caleb Williams, new quarterback, Chicago Bears, passes for at least 1 yard in a game. Boom, you win. That's 4 weeks of free wins once the NFL starts. Don't miss it, because when September ends, that offer is gone. PrizePicks, best way to win real money this football season. Which players are taken off, which aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. And I've got a pick for you right now, but I want to tell you first, download the PrizePicks app today. Use my code OutKick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code OutKick, first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. And I have got a pick for you because I am so excited that college football is back. Georgia Tech, Florida State, noon Eastern, I believe, on Saturday from Ireland. Also, SMU is playing. And I have to tell you, I'm going to make a pick for each game. Florida State. New quarterback. Now that they are into a new era, you've got DJ, and I've not been able to pronounce his name correctly for like 4 years. Ugalele, did I get at least close? Ugalele, I think that's close. Clemson star quarterback that they expected to take over for Trevor Lawrence and just be incredible. Didn't pan out for him. He didn't play phenomenally well at Clemson. Ultimately transfers to Oregon State. Now he is going to be the FSU quarterback. And I have to tell you that I believe he is going to throw for less than 236.5 yards. That is, I do not believe that he is going to have a big game in Ireland. I think he is going to throw for less than 236.5 yards. Flip side. SMU quarterback Preston Stone, I believe he is going to throw for more than 230.5 passing yards. Less for FSU's quarterback, more for SMU's quarterback. Boom, you take both those, you will have a winner come Saturday in week 0 of college football action. Okay, let's dive in. There's not a lot of great sports stories out there right now, by the way. I was just scrolling through, looking at all the top headlines everywhere. There's like nothing out there. But we still have the DNC going on, and there's actually big news that's coming out of that. I'll talk about RFK Jr. theoretically dropping out tomorrow and endorsing Donald Trump and what that impact could be. I'll talk about Oprah at the DNC last night. I watched. Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania governor, at the DNC. Also, Trump on the military and COVID shots. But I want to start with Tim Walz, Minnesota governor, spoke last night for about 16 minutes. On my notepad, I scribbled down a bunch of thoughts that I had about Tim Walz's speech. But I want to start with this one. There are lots of reasons that you can attack J.D. Vance. We don't all have to agree on every political opinion. In fact, we shouldn't. We should debate. We should have a variety of opinions out there as it pertains to J.D. Vance or Tim Walz or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. That's perfectly healthy. That's how our modern political system should work. Here's something that J.D. Vance is getting attacked on that I don't believe should be political at all. He's getting attacked for going to Yale Law School. This is bonkers. Going to Yale Law School is an incredible accomplishment for anyone. It isn't easy to get into. I couldn't get into Yale Law School. I didn't apply, but the odds of me getting in would have been low. I didn't want to go to New Haven, Connecticut. I ended up at Vanderbilt Law School, very good law school. Most people can't get into Vanderbilt Law School. Getting into a top 20-ish law school is very hard. You have to have a great resume. You have to do well in college. You have to do well on the LSAT. It's not easy to get into an elite law school in America. Just not. And what's crazy to me is, and I say this as a kid who was public school in Nashville, Tennessee, kindergarten to 12th grade. I went my entire academic career as a public school kid, all the way through 12th grade. When I was a kid, we aspired to be something more than we were. I'm a middle-class kid, and I wanted to go to a really good college, and I wanted to go to a really good law school. J.D. Vance had way less advantages than I did. I had phenomenal parents. I had a great family structure. I was incredibly fortunate and privileged for that reason. I think I had two of the best parents on the planet. I feel incredibly fortunate to have had them. I think I've had a lot of success because of the upbringing that I got from them, okay? J.D. Vance didn't have that. He had a broken family. He was raised to a large extent by his grandmother without very much money. And despite that, public school kid from not a great part of Ohio, goes and joins the Marines, then goes to Ohio State, then gets admitted to Yale Law School. That's phenomenal. Every red state kid that I knew wanted to be something more than he was or she was. We wanted to rise above whatever our parents might have accomplished. And our parents wanted it. Our grandparents wanted it. Everyone wants for their kids to achieve a higher level of success than they did. That is innately the American dream. And the reason why I bring it up is I actually think it's emblematic of how much the Democrat Party has changed. I've voted Democrat before. I stay committed to principles over party. Maybe in 20 years, I'll vote Democrat again. I don't have a lot of faith, candidly, in political parties to make rational decisions and remain committed to principle. I've remained committed to principle. And Bill Clinton, I didn't vote for Bill Clinton because I wasn't old enough to vote for Bill Clinton, but I volunteered on Bill Clinton's 1996 presidential campaign as a 17-year-old in Nashville, Tennessee. I think Bill Clinton was actually a pretty good president. Obviously has many different flaws. We can get into those, we cannot. But Bill Clinton spoke on the same day Tim Walz did. And there was a massive IQ difference between the two, but also Clinton represented what the Democrat Party used to represent. Walz represents what they represent now. Let me explain the difference. Bill Clinton was a single-parent kid raised in Hope, Arkansas, who managed to get into Georgetown and then went to Yale Law School, became a Rhodes Scholar, went back to Arkansas, got elected, I think, first Attorney General and then governor of the state of Arkansas. And then that propelled him to get elected President of the United States. Reason why I bring that up is Bill Clinton, I feel like I was raised more in the era of Clinton. I looked at Bill Clinton as a kid growing up in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. For those of you who don't know the Nashville area, Goodlettsville ain't the super rich part of Nashville, okay? I looked at a kid like Bill Clinton and the way that he grew up, and I said, wow, he was able to have a great deal of success as a kid without a tremendous pedigree. He, single parent, went to school in D.C., then went to an elite law school. I went to school in D.C. I went to an elite law school. I've got a couple of graduate degrees now. I'm proud that I went to Vanderbilt University. I think it's a fabulous place. I got a grad degree, 2 grad degrees from Vanderbilt. My wife's got 2 grad degrees from Vanderbilt. My sister's got a degree from Vanderbilt. My brother-in-law's got a medical school degree from Vanderbilt. We have a lot of connections to Vanderbilt University now. I'm proud of those because I had to work to get there. I had to be a part of the meritocracy in order to attain that achievement. Tim Walz attacking J.D. Vance for going to Yale Law School is, to me, emblematic of how the Democrat Party has turned its back on the meritocracy and on the idea of poor kids having huge aspirations and seeking to achieve them. Look, I don't know right now, for those of you out there watching or listening to this, I don't know what your family situation is. I don't know where you're going to school. I am here looking directly at you and saying you can be much more than you are right now. You can achieve things that your own parents did not achieve, things that your own grandparents did not achieve. You control whether or not you are successful. Now, I understand I don't agree with a lot of the protests that are going on Ivy League campuses right now. I think that the left wing has taken over, unfortunately, many different university campuses and taken away freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of argument in many ways all too often. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't aspire to get the best possible education that you can. And maybe that means going to start at a community college. My grandfather dropped out of school in 8th grade. I'm named after him. His name was Clay Travis. He died long before I was ever able to go to college. I think and hope that he would have been thrilled that his grandson, within 2 generations, became a lawyer at Vanderbilt when he was an 8th grade dropout from Kentucky coal mine. That is the American dream. My grandfather, who I was also named after, didn't have a college degree. My mom and dad went to MTSU. I was the first in my family to leave the state and go to college. We built opportunity based on having success over generations. That's the American dream. I actually think it's incredibly insulting of Tim Walz to start off his speech by saying, I graduated with 24 people and none of them went to Yale. Well, why shouldn't they have aspired to go to Yale? Why shouldn't every kid aspire to go to Harvard or Vanderbilt or Duke or Stanford or whatever elite state university, University of Georgia, University of Florida, University of Tennessee might be in your state? I want you to be the first in your family to go to college. I want you to be the first in your family to go to law school, to go to med school. That's the American dream. And I want you to work harder and be better than other people and have more success than other people. Have more success than your mom and dad did. Have more success than your grandma and grandpa did, your great-grandma, your great-grandpa. The idea that a Democrat Party would go from Bill Clinton, I believe in hope, look at what I could do as a single-parent, household-raised kid to go to Georgetown, to go to Yale, to now saying you've got this, what I think is not very smart guy in Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who's failed in the 2 most significant decisions he had to make as governor, now denigrating people who came from nothing and lifted themselves up and went to go attain an elite education. I think it's everything wrong with American politics. And I would say that on the flip side, if there was somebody in the Republican Party who was coming out and denigrating a Democrat politician because they had started off with nothing and ended up going to an elite academic institution, you might disagree with them politically. We should all aspire to the greatest possible education within our grasp. And maybe that doesn't have to happen at Harvard. Maybe it doesn't have to happen at Yale. Maybe it happens at the University of Florida or the University of Arizona or Montana State. But to denigrate somebody because they went to Yale and lifted themselves up, I guarantee J.D. Vance's grandmother would have been ecstatic. I know his mom's proud of him. I know my mom's super proud of me. Every parent dreams of their kid being more successful than they are. Every grandparent dreams of their grandchildren being able to live a life that they couldn't afford to live. We should be celebrating when people do that, not attacking them because they managed to accomplish it. That's important. And again, I don't think it's particularly political. Now, if you want to go to politics, I think Tim Walz is an awful candidate. I watched Josh Shapiro speak last night, governor of Pennsylvania. He was phenomenal. Smart, passionate. I don't agree with him on some issues. Kamala Harris' most important decision was who she picked as vice president, and she whiffed. She picked Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro because Josh Shapiro is Jewish, and there's too many anti-Semites now inside of the Democrat Party. It's a big deal. It's a big flaw of the Democrat Party right now. But I want to talk about Tim Walz. Josh Shapiro should have been the pick. He's in Pennsylvania. Whoever wins Pennsylvania, I think, is going to be the next president of the United States. If you told me, hey, pick one state, Clay, I'm going to pick state of Pennsylvania. Whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to be the next president of the United States. There are other states that matter, but the easiest way to get to 270, the electoral votes that you need to be president, is who wins Pennsylvania. So I think the election's going to come down to who wins Pennsylvania. Now, it's also possible whoever wins Pennsylvania is also going to win Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, right? All these battleground states, they may all end up moving in concert. But if you told me right now, pick a state, Clay, you can know exactly what happens in that state. I will tell you who wins the presidency if you tell me what happens in Pennsylvania. So you should have picked Josh Shapiro, Kamala Harris. But I'm big on, if you are a governor, you have relatively few, typically, really big decisions that you have to make. And if you get the really big decisions right, you can have a successful governorship. Walz had two challenges in his tenure as Minnesota governor: COVID and the BLM protest in the wake of George Floyd. He gets Fs on both. The two most significant decisions that he had to make: how do I respond to COVID, and how do I respond to the George Floyd BLM protest in Minneapolis? He failed on both counts. Let's start with COVID. On COVID, this guy shut down his state and didn't allow kids to be in school, shut down businesses, had a snitch line to allow people to be turned in if they were having too many people over to their house. He talks about neighborliness now. He was wrong on COVID. He made kids play basketball in masks when he finally let sports return. He didn't let football be played in the fall of 2020 because he said it wasn't safe to do so. Where I am, we played football safely. Kids in high school all played. Not where Tim Walz is in the state of Minnesota. He failed on COVID. COVID was, to me, an intelligence test. If you failed on COVID as a governor, I can never vote for you again. Tim Walz failed on COVID. He also failed on the BLM protest in the wake of George Floyd. He didn't call out the National Guard to protect his state fast enough, and he allowed Minneapolis to burn. $500 million in damages, thousands of businesses shut down, the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis burned to the ground. He failed utterly when it came to protecting the people of Minnesota from rioters, looters, and violent protesters. So he failed on COVID, he failed on that, and now he wants a promotion? No way. I also, this is just my analysis, I thought his speech was awful. 16 minutes, really bad sports analogies. He said, we're down 3, but we have the ball. And Kamala Harris is your quarterback? Yeah, I don't like your odds. He gave us no policy prescriptions. They're still lying about the office that he attained in the National Guard. 30 trips to China. I'm not sure I've left the country 30 times. I'm 45 years old now. I've never had a public job. That is, taxpayers have never paid for me to be able to work. How in the world did he go to China supposedly 30 times? I'm not kidding. I don't think that I've left the United States 30 times in my life. Now, I've had to pay for every one of my trips, and now I have to pay for my 3 kids, my wife, a lot of other family members sometimes too. But I'm not sure. Maybe I have. I'm not sure I've left the country 30 times. I've been to Europe probably 4 or 5 times. Maybe it's 6 or 7 now. I don't know. We just got back from Australia. I've been to Mexico quite a few times. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to Canada. I don't know if you really count Canada as leaving the country, but to the extent that that counts, I probably have been over because my wife's from Michigan, and sometimes you get in the water and you cross over into Canada just while you're in a boat in Michigan. I mean, that's the reality of how close Canada is. And if you count when I lived in the Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands as a different country, like the line of demarcation there is really close. So I probably have been, but that's partly based on where I live. I've never been to any one country 30 times. I'm not sure I've been to any other country more than 4 or 5 times in my life. This is weird. This guy's not normal. He's lied about a lot of things, but he failed on COVID and he failed on the BLM protest. And I thought his speech was atrocious. 16 minutes, really fastly delivered. It felt to me like a really bad coach's speech. Now, I respect coaches. I really do. I have coached soccer, baseball, basketball, and football, I believe, at some point in time, all four of those sports with my kids. Not saying I've done it well, but I have coached as a dad all four of those sports as my kids have done it. Not saying I've done a great job of it, but I respect coaches and the impact they have on kids' lives. Tim Walz doesn't seem like a very good coach to me. He doesn't seem very smart. I think Kamala Harris is smarter than Tim Walz. I don't think that Kamala Harris is a unique, incredible intellect herself. I think she's smarter than Tim Walz. Tim Walz seems like a moron to me. And I'm also insulted by the idea that Democrats are trying to say, oh, he appeals to red state voters. I don't think that's true. I really don't. I think it's like cosplay Tim Walz communists trying to appeal to red state voters. I mean, I live in a red state. I'll be on the road all fall for college football. I feel like I know college football fans pretty well. Tim Walz doesn't seem like a normal college football fan to me. They want to talk about how he's a coach. He's an assistant coach, not a head coach, state champion. They don't talk about him as governor. They talk about him as a coach. I think this is a disastrous pick. And I think his performance last night was also disastrous. Really, really bad. And again, I think if Josh Shapiro had been the pick, I wouldn't have been able to say that. I would say, you know what? I disagree with Josh Shapiro on some things, but he's done a good job as governor. He's well-liked. He's smart. I don't think that's true about Tim Walz. In fact, I think Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are the two dumbest president and vice presidents as a ticket combined that we've ever seen in my life. And you might say, okay, why do you think that matters? Well, I think intelligence matters primarily because you have to be smart enough to trust your own instincts. And I think if you look at COVID, Ron DeSantis, Brian Kemp, Bill Lee, Greg Abbott, there's a lot of these Republican governors that looked at the data and said, I'm opening my state back up. We can't shut down our economy for this long. And if you look at those states, they are the ones that are dominating right now from an economic perspective. And so I give credit to those guys for being right. I think Tim Walz should be held accountable for being wrong. Couple of other things. I give credit to Trump on this. Yesterday he was speaking in Asheboro, North Carolina. I think right now he's down at the border. And Trump said that if you were kicked out of the military over refusing to take the COVID shot, as many were, thousands, I don't know what the total number was, he says he will reinstate you when he wins election, reinstate you to the military, apologize for the fact that you were fired, and give you your back pay. Bravo. I know that probably a lot of you watching this show right now, watching this clip right now, are still angry about COVID. I am. There have been no real consequences for all the lies we were told. This is a good step by Trump. I think RFK Jr., which I'm going to talk about in a moment, is also a big step on this. RFK Jr. was right on COVID. A lot of people are upset with Trump because he wasn't aggressive enough from a federal perspective in the summer and fall and spring of 2020 at opening back up states. I would actually say this is where Trump deferred to federalism. This is why the argument that Trump would be a dictator is so laughably absurd to me. Never in my life has a president had the opportunity to take more power than during COVID. Look at what Biden did when he came into office from a federal perspective. You know what Trump did? He deferred to governors and mayors. Given the opportunity to take more power for the executive branch than had ever occurred in the history of my life, Trump actually deferred to governors and to mayors. And that's why some Republicans are still mad at him. But I think this is the right move to reinstate all those military members, give them back pay, and give them an apology. Good for Trump. I would vote for him on that thesis alone. Now, RFK Jr. reportedly going to drop out and endorse Trump potentially tomorrow. I think this is a big deal. You look at the data, where are RFK Jr.'s voters coming from right now? He gets around 5% of the overall vote. Trump stands to pick up about 2 points nationwide if RFK Jr. is out of the race. Given how close this race looks like it might be right now, 2 points, if it holds from where we are right now, would mean Trump would win the election. So I think this is a no-brainer. I would put RFK Jr. in my cabinet if I were Trump. I would allow RFK Jr. to continue to speak out about how wrong the government was about COVID. And I think this is a big win. I think that Trump, we'll talk about this tomorrow if it happens, if RFK Jr. endorses Trump and drops out of the race this week, I think that Trump will get a bigger bounce out of the Democrat National Convention than Kamala Harris, which is basically unheard of. Finally, Oprah spoke at the DNC. Oprah claims to be not particularly political. There's all sorts of videos out there of Oprah and Trump having a good relationship in the past, of Oprah asking Trump if he would run for president. In fact, Trump has talked about picking Oprah as his vice president in years past. Now Oprah has decided she doesn't like Trump at all, but she said that she's been the victim of racism, sexism in her career. I don't understand why the world has decided to fixate on victimization as something to be proud of. I wish that nobody was ever a victim, ever. But the idea that you would brag about the fact that you have been a victim is, to me, just fundamentally the antithesis of the way that I was raised. Oprah's worth supposedly nearly $3 billion. She got her show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, when she was still relatively young, I believe around 31 years old. Adam, look that up for me if you would. How old was Oprah when she got her first national show? Oprah has uniquely benefited from America's capitalist system and the incredible opportunities it provides as compared to almost anyone in all of media. Almost no one else who hosted a show has ever become a billionaire based on just hosting a television show. Now, she also created the Oprah Winfrey Network. She's made a lot of smart business decisions. I don't begrudge her for making those decisions. Good for her. I'm a capitalist. But to go out and speak in Chicago, a city that helped to make her a billionaire, and claim that you were a victim of racism and sexism, I'm sorry, I'd like to be a victim of both if it means that I'm going to become a billionaire. I just think we have created a world where people want to marinate in their victimhood. I talked to you off the top about be the central character in your own success or failure. Trust me, I understand. It's easy to look around and blame other people for why you did not succeed. That is very common. In fact, incredibly common. Most people out there sit around and come up with reasons why they failed, and they find other people that are responsible for that other than themselves. I'd rather hear Oprah say, hey, I was able to have unique success. Her show evidently went national in 1986. She was young in 1986. Credit to Oprah for her success. But why in 2024 does she want to claim that America's racism and sexism somehow held her back? She's going to be worth $5 billion otherwise? Again, I don't understand why she couldn't come out and tell her success story and say that it was uniquely an American opportunity. So, 32 years old, she got her first show, 31, whatever she was. I appreciate all of you. Tomorrow we'll react to Kamala's speech tonight, and we'll take you into the weekend. PrizePicks.com, code OutKick. DJ Ugalele, less than 236.5 yards passing. Preston Stone of SMU, more than 230.5. That's my pick for PrizePicks. Use code OutKick, get $100 with your first, up to $100 with your first deposit. Love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis. This has been OutKick, the show.